Over the last 45 or 50 years, I've figured out that a skill saw has a hard time killing you, but a ladder has no trouble at all. And what that means is that it's time for me as a 66-year-old man to sort of amp up my ladder safety. I've done some videos on ladder safety, but I'm going to show you today actually three, aftermarket do-it-yourself hacks, changes, upgrades that you can do to an extension ladder to get it a little closer to being safe. So one of the first problems, and one of the things that'll get you in trouble, is if the ground is not level, like level. And you've seen me digging holes to let the high side down. You've seen me using plywood to shim the low side up. Ideally, I mean, if you're into it, you need to put leg levelers on the bottom of your extension ladder. So I went down to the friendly neighborhood box store and I got a Werner leg leveler kit, 54 bucks, I think. Seemed like a deal. And I've been spending the last 6 hours reading the instructions. Not really. It's intuitive, it's doable. If I can do it, you can do it. And so here we are. The brilliance of Werner's solution here is you don't need to have two of the leveling devices on your ladder. You can exchange it, left side, right side. So there are two of the attachment points, one for the left, one for the right. Left, right, important. This goes up, important. And with these two attachment devices in place, then whichever side needs to be extended, you can in just, I think, a short period of time, I hope, switch the leveler around, install it, stand your ladder up and go to work. Here's how it goes. You know it's great glue when it says super glue. A couple drops, they say, just a little bit. Don't glue these spacers to the ladder. You're gluing them to the back of the device, I guess. This strikes me as being a little bit tricky. And then you glue your fingers to the device, move it around a little just to help it. Get it visually square, left side on the left side facing the ladder. Big square washers and a fender washer and a nut. Make sure I got that right. I'm going to turn this over on its side. So they provide the Allen wrench, and it's a 13mm socket. I had to put that on a drill motor. I can see a case for a shorter bolt. Dragging your feet on that might not be great. This little center rib is nice, it gives me center, but it makes it impossible to start a center punch on that, so I'm going to try to sort of knock that thing out of there with this cape chisel. Is that necessary? Probably not. So there was a little more monkey motion here than there needed to be. You need to put both of the spacers in here on this sort of an extruded aluminum ladder so there's room for this keeper to clear the edges. And the learning curve is flattening out. It is not rocket science, but it's still provided some free frustration. But you just put this thing in there and push it up. And then this is the keeper. I don't know whether you'd feel better putting it through on this side where the lanyard barely reaches or coming around from the back. where there's lots of room, maybe it doesn't matter. But the idea is that it can be pushed down and locked. Let's see how that works in position. So, like every other example I have of trying to follow instructions, my wife will concur that, yeah, it took me longer than it should have, but it's going to work out fine. This has clearance when the factory foot is engaged, which is what you want, because if your floor is level, you don't need this thing. So you stand your ladder up, and in a case like this, we've talked about it before, but the way to gauge the angle is to stand with your toes against the ladder and stick your hands out. And if this is pretty much comfortable, then this is pretty much safe. So, boom, boom, working good, going on up. Let's see how this thing works if it's uneven. So to mock this up, I'm going to do something unsafe. Let me repeat that. This is unsafe. I'm putting an 1.5-inch board on smooth concrete as a shim. Don't do that, because the board is going to love to slip. We're just using this to demonstrate whether or not the leveler works. So now we've got an 1.5 inch discrepancy. The instructions say, leave it resting against the wall. Let me see if I get this right. There we go. A little too much maybe. Let's see what this does. Take the load off of it. Yeah. I like that. Okay, so this releases it when you take the load off. That gets out of the way once you're set. That enables you to manipulate it with your foot or with your thumb. Let's see how that works. Pretty good. Even better outside. And then if it's the other side that needs adjusting, let's run this back up. Take the load off. Comes up free. Pull that out, reach in here and hit that release. Let's do this. Wow, look at that. Rolls around to the other side. Get a little slack. Looks like I need to press this little release button. It's in. Works just fine. Let's raise this up in the air. Let's bring this out. Now, how did I learn to do this? I just flip this out, push it down. Comes tight. One more click maybe. Yes. And just like that, you're airborne if the hole is on the other side of the world. Now I can see that a guy could become acquainted with that, but doesn't weigh much, and you could store this in the shop or in a toolbox and just break it out when you need it. Okay, so let's move on off of this. I'll just point out they got a nail hole right there for nailing it, you know, if you feel like you need to anchor the bottom of your ladder, which is never the wrong thing. That's smart. Seems handy. Once you get it in place, it seems intuitive. Like everything else, practice, practice, practice. But let me repeat myself. I've never had these things. Ron Sharp, you know, 4 Seasons Painting on our Spec House series. By the way, if you didn't know that we did a spec house from beginning to end, there's 150 videos about how to build a house. The painter, the best on the planet, had these things on a ladder. And so I thought, well, if it's good enough for Ron Sharp, it's good enough for me, because let me show you something. Can you see that? That's a knowledge bump. I got that last week in my bathroom. I fell down in my bathroom and I cut my head and I hurt my back, and I thought, if I don't like to fall from my feet to the floor, how would I like to fall off a ladder now that I'm 66? I think the answer to that is clearer to me now than it was a week and a half ago. So now let's talk about a ladder stabilizer that goes on the top to increase the area, to reduce the tipping, to provide some friction, and to span a window if you need to. I learned that from Ron Sharp too. So assembling this was a lot faster than assembling that. Took a little time paying attention to driving these little rubber protectors on the end. There's an aluminum support that clips back inside of that. This is a hook for a paint bucket, which I may have going the wrong way. I don't know about that. Doesn't matter. That's not what keeps you alive. This is what keeps you alive. And the mechanism, once this thing is together, keeping track of this pin, come up from underneath. You operate this little catch mechanism right there, get some slack there, and the brackets engage both rungs at the same time. That takes up some slack. And then this thing, I assume the safest method is from the front to the back. And that's it. Let's stand it up, see how much weight that adds to the problem of extending the ladder up into the air, which has always been my objection, and then see what it feels like once it's in place. Wow. So my initial impression, you can feel that it's up there, but it's not unmanageable. And I tell you what, that feels better already. Now there's some controversy here. Some of you bust my chops for holding onto the rails and say, get a hold of the rungs. Some of you say that the safety class you went through, or the fire department you work for, or wherever you received your training, tells you do not grab the rungs, hang on to the rails. You know what I think? Do what makes you feel safest. Okay. So look at the advantages. I mean, the side to side is gone. And you could straddle a window and wash it. You can paint behind your ladder. You can hang your bucket right there. I don't know if I'm going to let my wife use an extension ladder to paint the side of the house this summer or not, but if I do, it'll be this one. It's as far down as it's going to come with that stabilizer on there, so I'm going up one more. Going to let this down and see if I really resent having an extra 2 pounds up there. No, not bad at all. Worth it. So the last item that you can think about if you just want to upgrade your ladder a little, these mittens, I think they were $8. I've had these on here for a long time, and the biggest thing they do is they keep you from scarring up the siding. I mean, you can drop this against a wall and not worry about creating a problem. They also increase the friction a little bit, reduce the tendency to slide side to side. And that is, sometimes it's important, or at least it feels important. It's not as safe as having someone spotting the ladder. It's not as safe as tying the ladder off. I mean, clearly ladders are a deadly, deadly tool, but I would think that it's $78 for the stabilizer, yeah, and $54 for the adjustable leg. Where are we at? 130 bucks, 132 bucks or something. That's way, way, way less than a trip to the emergency room. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.